Hi guys, during the pandemic, Boris Johnson and his government portrayed the image of an administration doing its best to protect the public and save lives. But while the more cynical of us knew this was not true, we had little evidence apart from what we could see was in regards to the way they were handling it. We had nothing concrete from Boris Johnson to link him to the idea that the economy was being prioritised over people. The COVID inquiry continues to expose Boris Johnson for what he truly is. A heartless, sick individual who cared more about his career than the very lives of the citizens he was tasked with protecting. Imran Shafi, Boris Johnson's private secretary for public services, gave evidence here that the former Prime Minister's focus was on the economy, not people. Have a listen.
The Prime Minister didn't want a lockdown because he believed, at least in part, that the consequences would be so damaging that given that large numbers of people would die anyway, there was no point.
I don't recognise that. I think he was extremely concerned about the other harms that would be caused with a lockdown.
There was a
non-COVID health, sort of people deprivation, education, all of these sort of incredibly important issues, alongside the incredibly important issues of protecting people from COVID.
And the no less important issue of death and harm.
Yes, and I think, I can't remember exactly when the Chief Medical Officer started to sort of categorise it, but he has quite a clear way of sort of demonstrating how death and harm can be caused through lots of different routes, of which direct COVID deaths is just one of those routes that you need to worry about.
On the 19th and 20th of March, the Prime Minister met the Chancellor of the Exchequer on at least two occasions. Perhaps there were meetings or phone calls, but...
Probably. I don't have the full record.
Could we have 146636, please? This is your diary, your notebook, page 92. Halfway down the page, we can see CX bilat. Is that a reference to a bilateral meeting between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
It is, yes.
In quotes, we're killing the patient to tackle the tumour. Large PPL, numbers of people,
Yep.
who will die. Why are we destroying everything for people who will die anyway soon?
I think that says economy. Sorry, it's my handle.
Destroy the economy for people who will die anyway soon. Mr. Shafi, who said those words?
I can't say for sure. I think it was the former Prime Minister.
And people in hospital, the elderly or the infirm or the ill, were described as bed blockers.
I think that was a term that was also widely used in DHSC and the NHS of people who didn't need to be in hospital.
There we have it. You know, the economy was prioritised. Why was the economy prioritised? Why did Boris Johnson care more about the economy than he did about people who were literally dying? Because he was focusing on the next general election. He knew that if the economy suffered, then he would be booted out of office. He would either be removed by his MPs or he would be removed by the electorate. So his focus was on the economy. His focus was not on saving lives, even though he said that on a nightly basis, that the government's priority was protecting people. From the very beginning of the pandemic, Boris Johnson didn't care about dealing with this pandemic. He refused to go to COBRA meetings. He missed a number of COBRA meetings at the very beginning. He refused to follow the advice of the scientists. They told him you need to lock down, and he refused to follow that advice because his focus was not on protecting people. It was on protecting himself, protecting his government. Because he knew that if the economy was to suffer, his backbenchers would call for him to go, or there would be pressure for another general election. He thought it would be all plain sailing. He had an 80-seat majority. He could do whatever the hell he wanted. But he was afraid that the headbangers within his party, who were more concerned with the economy than with the lives of ordinary people, would have him removed. So he listened to them. He followed their advice, not the scientists. And that's the consequences. Boris Johnson doesn't care about other people. He only cares about himself. Now, when it comes to bed blockers, yes, this is a term used generally in the NHS, used in other hospitals. But the problem with this, the use during the pandemic, was that there was nowhere for people to go because care homes were not being protected. Eventually, they just sent people into care homes. But then we saw what happened to care homes then. We all knew that Boris Johnson didn't care. But now we have the evidence. Will anything happen to Boris Johnson? Well, he's already removed from Parliament. He's no longer Prime Minister. But will he face any further consequences? Unfortunately not. And I knew this at the time. I knew that Boris Johnson would be called out. I knew that he would be exposed, but nothing would happen. No serious consequences would be brought against him. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.